Yes, we are back. Another week, another episode of Stand Up Explained. I am one of your hosts, Brant Tobler.
I'm Andrew Slater.
It is Brant Tobler and Andrew Slater coming to you from Portland and Denver. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for listening to the show. You guys are doing good. You guys are spreading the message. We appreciate it. The 5-star ratings, the reviews, the subscribing. We appreciate that. All I ask this week, here's your homework this week. Wherever you are, whatever city you are in, you probably have a Facebook page for that city's comedy. If you're enjoying the show, just hop on there and say, hey, up and coming comics, new comics, old comics, if you guys want a fun podcast about stand-up, just give us a quick plug. We'd appreciate it. And because the numbers are growing, and that's because of you guys. So thank you for doing that, because we aren't charging shit and we're not spending our own money paying for advertising or any of that. So we count on, if you guys want the show to keep going, tell some people, because we will keep doing it as long as you guys keep listening. But at this point, since we don't do comedy, we are not going to be putting up a bunch of money we're not making into ads and all that shit.
I know. I was like, it's so funny because I was like, I really do love doing this podcast. Like, why do I love doing this one so much? It's like, oh, it's because I can't do stand-up right now.
Yeah.
So it reminds me of all the things that I like about stand-up, because otherwise I might forget.
Yeah. So we enjoy talking. We enjoy talking comedy always. So if you have anything you want us to talk about, let us know. We've got your comments. We're getting to some of the stuff you want. We're just going in kind of an order. We don't want to tell you how to be a famous comedian before we tell you how to do callbacks and transitions. I was trying to make a good transition there and I fucked it up. Today we're going to talk about
how to talk is next episode.
Yeah. We're going to talk about callbacks and transitions. And I'm curious to see what you think about this, Andrew, because I remember when I started, I was so worried about my transitions between jokes that I would just say the most absurd shit to try to tie, to tie a joke about an elephant to Joe Rogan's shoe size or something. And it'd be like, what? And then I just thought it was so important. I don't know if that's a phase you went through or not.
I'm going to try that. An elephant never forgets. And I can never forget how small Joe Rogan's feet are.
Yeah, that's the kind of shit I would do. Just absurd. I don't know where I thought it was so important to be like a professional comedian. I had to have the seamless transition. And then.
Let's start with transitions and then go to callbacks. Or we should start with callbacks, do transitions, and then callback. Yeah. Okay. No. But what I think about transitions is that, yes, in a way overrated, right? Like, really the only purpose to me of like smooth transitions is to just to remember your next joke, or just to me, it's like, I need transitions just to make sure I don't miss anything in my set, especially if you're doing a longer set. But even in like 5 minutes, transitions help because they just make sure I do every joke on my list, right? So if you have a good transition, it's just a way to get me to my next joke. I hate it. It's like, and I've done this before, so I'm including myself in this, but I don't like when transitions are overwritten. So like what I just said about the Joe Rogan, and I've had those before, and I cringe when I hear them. But when they're too cutesy and they're too like, because they're not funny, they're just like clever, they're just like smart enough to get you to the next joke. It's just lose all that and just do the next joke.
Yeah,
right?
I agree. Because if you're writing great jokes, those come off as just like a clever kind of shit joke in the middle that you don't even, when you have a killer joke and then a killer joke and then you put this weird, clever, funny guy transition in between, it takes, I would prefer to just be known as the killer, just keep killing,
Yeah, and I'm always surprised at how little an audience actually needs to understand what you're talking about. Like sometimes I'll like find out on accident, but like I'll forget a beginning of a joke. Like sometimes like I lead into jokes with a bunch of extra stuff just because I was talking about my parents for 10 minutes and then I need to get to these church jokes, right? And so then it's like I do this little preamble about my parents went to church, and then I used to go, and then when I go back, I go to church with my parents, and this is what I've known. And then sometimes I'll be like spacing out on stage or whatever, and I'll just do the joke without doing that preamble, and the audience is right there with me just as much as if I'd done. So it's like you would really be surprised how little transition the audience actually needs.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like I said, starting out, I thought it was so important. And then I'm with you. I use the transitions as kind of glue between chunks to help me remember what chunk I'm going to go
Right.
to. A lot of the transitions I use are just simple. Like you said, I shortened them a lot. I mean, I used to have, that was the bad part, is I'd have jokes and then my transitions would be longer than my jokes when it should have been
Right.
the other way.
Right.
Then now I'm just have, we always talk about cutting the fat and eliminating stuff you don't need. So I would trim up my jokes and then just do some rambling on nonsense transition that I felt like I had to connect the jokes. And I was like, I just grabbed the fat I cut off and just jammed it over here in a different spot. It was just so bad.
Yeah, and I do think like it is, everything about stand up is like you're trying to cut and get to the joke, and transitions are the opposite of that. But sometimes you'll be told to to put in transitions. A lot of like comedy club, experts, like whether it's bookers or like late night bookers or something, they'll watch your set and they think they need to like kind of tinker with things, or like here's it needs this polish, and they think you need to have like this overarching theme to the set or whatever. And I would I would like appease them with, if that's what it takes to get the spot or to get the booking or whatever, like show that you're trying a little bit, but just try and do it with as few words as possible, So it's like if they want you to make your whole set about, your background, your origin, and you have to like frame each joke in that. Or like, for instance, I've been doing these like Zoom shows for this coronavirus relief agency, I don't know, whatever. But at first they wanted all the jokes to be about the virus. They wanted all the jokes to be about the outbreak. And so it was like, well, am I going to write 10 minutes of stuff that's may or may not be that good about the coronavirus? Or will I just like frame it? So if I have a joke about, Wells Fargo, I'll just say, oh man, I can't even go into the bank anymore because of coronavirus. Speaking of, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
then you
yeah.
just go into whatever the bit was. So you just try to do that as your focus, I think, with transitions is like, do it as quickly as possible, not as like
Mhm.
cleverly as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't try to make your transitions stronger than your jokes. But that's a great
Right.
point right there I mean, if you could do that, I'm not against transitions, but I just think like what you just said is a perfect way to use a transition to your benefit of like,
And you
especially
just,
on something like that.
yeah. And you just don't want to spend too much time on it either. It's like, I don't know, use them. They should, it, you want to seamlessly and easily go from joke to joke,
Yeah.
right? You want to comfortably go from joke to joke. And if you need a transition to do that, then great. If you need a way in, fine. But I think what you'll find is try cutting more and more and more from that and see how you feel. And if the audience isn't weird about it and you're not weird about it and you're saying less words, that's good, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, I mean, the transition can just be a pause or taking a drink or stuff like you can transition to the next joke. And we've talked about a little bit on here, just like the silence. Sometimes when you're silent up there, I learned to just kind of do silent transitions where I'd finish a joke and then what we've kind of talked about, movement,
Yeah.
maybe smile, give the
Movement.
crowd a look. That's a transition. And then you kind of reset, but then you're going and that shows more confidence. And, that's when I think I got better, is just my transitions were just pauses, silence, me standing there, being in the moment, and then just going to the next joke like I'm commanding the stage. Whereas in the beginning, I was doing, like I said, these long, stupid elephant Joe Rogan feet jokes that were just, I think, just caused
What is
confusion.
the elephant Joe Rogan feet
I know I
joke?
just made up two things off the top of my head. I didn't have anything.
No, because it sounds like a good joke. I wish I
Well,
knew what it was.
if any of you guys want to write an elephant Joe Rogan
That's the
feet
homework. That's the
comment.
homework for this week is write an elephant
Yeah,
Joe
no, I
Rogan
just
feet
made
joke.
it up off the top of my head. But yeah, so
Well, and I think we've both seen comics, and I'm not saying you should do this, but comics can get laughs from the absence of transitions. That's like a good move.
yeah,
You've seen a
that's
lot where they'll start talking about something and then just abruptly say something totally different, get a laugh, and then they're into it. And then they might say, "Oh, I don't do transitions" or whatever,
yeah,
and they'll get another laugh off of that. But like, even if you don't call it out, you can just from the abruptness of changing the subject. It shows confidence, it shows command. It's like we're talking about what I want to talk about whenever I want to talk about it. They laugh from just the contrast. They're like, "Whoa, where'd that come from out of left field?" It's like a funny setup or premise, and you're already in, and then you're into the next thing. You didn't have
yeah.
to waste a bunch of time talking about. Speaking of sandwiches, my mom used to make sandwiches when I was a kid, and that makes
Yeah.
me think of my mom. And
But that I love what you said there. It just commands that it's your stage. We're gonna go where I want to go, and that is a
right.
trick that you can do if you. I mean, I've seen so many comics do that. Like, well, I guess I don't do transitions, or well, that was a hell of a
Yeah,
transition.
that's why I like hesitated. It's a move bordering on like hack. I'd say like,
Yeah,
but I don't think it's hacky to just do it and not then go back and go, I don't do transition. But if you just
yeah,
do it, you can get the laugh there too, and then not have to like call it out.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree. But like you said, don't spend too much time worrying about them, and we're not going to spend too much time worrying about them either. Hopefully that we touched on transitions, and hopefully that helped a little bit. But we're moving on to callbacks, which is kind of my favorite.
That was
You
a
got a
good
callback?
transition.
Huh? That was a good
That was a good
transition.
transition.
But I was still starting to kind of go on a little.
I know you went on too long. You should have just
I
said
had it.
like callbacks.
The perfect transition was you said, don't spend too much time on transitions. I should have said, and you nailed it. Don't spend too much time on transitions. So we won't on the callbacks. But you saw right there as an example of me over blah, 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 blah. And now to callbacks.
I don't like this is getting too meta. This podcast
Yeah.
is becoming too meta. Callbacks.
We're on to
So what do you
callbacks.
think about callbacks?
Love callbacks.
Callbacks are kind of controversial.
Oh, really?
Do you think?
No. Well, I want to hear what you think is controversial about it.
Well, I think some people think they're like easy.
Yeah. Well,
it's kind of like cheating a little bit.
It is kind of like cheating, but it's such a fun way to cheat. But when you're starting out,
I do callbacks.
I love them.
Yeah.
But I think there's easy callback, and then if you have a strong callback, if you could hit them with a callback out of nowhere, I mean, to me, those are when I get huge laughs. And something that I was going to get to is if you can call back, if you're watching someone else's set before you, and you can do a callback to that always crushes. And I don't think that's cheating because that's,
No, and that's nice. That shows you're paying attention. I know there's a comic in Seattle named Kermit Apio, and I feel like every time I see him, he opens with something off of previous comics, and it's just like a nice way. And he's a nice guy. He's famously a nice guy, and it's a way to show the audience like, hey, no, I'm watching, and I thought those people were great too,
Yeah. And if you watch, I mean, for example, I do one here with a very funny comic, Nathan Lund. He does this bit about, and he'll just do it sometimes, and if I'm following him, he'll just do this bit about just shitting on people, I think from Pittsburgh, and he'll just do like a 5-minute bit. And then I'll just come up and I'll be like, hey, Brant Tober, let me tell you a little about myself. So I grew up in Pittsburgh, and just and I mean, that's cheating and easy, but I love it because to me, I could see where someone, and maybe even be called a little bit hacky, but man, that is just fun for me because I know it's coming and then they don't. So I like that. That's more of an easy one, but
I think so I currently before COVID, like I was doing a callback as my closer. I would close on a callback. And I think now this time is giving me enough space to really like look at it critically and be like, the joke itself wasn't strong enough to justify being my closer. It was just
Mm-hmm.
that it was the callback was pretty good. And so then I was like, oh, that's like a neat close. It's like kind of like a bup, 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 or whatever, you know? And now the more I think about it, the more I'm like, that shouldn't be my closer. And so I'm like going to reshuffle things when I go back. But I don't think like your whole joke, your joke should be able to stand on its own without a callback.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It should be funny enough to not need the callback to survive. You should be able to do the joke, have it be funny without having to do the setup to it 20 minutes before
Yeah.
for the joke to work.
No, I use my callbacks just like I use my tags pretty much. It's just a better, like when you tag a joke or something, if I could tag it with a callback, it just to me is like an enhanced tag. But
have you ever done the callback for a joke you didn't do?
yes.
Yeah.
Plenty of times.
Yeah.
But that just means you should write more material and
you should be in the moment. You should pay attention to what you're doing. One time, okay, real quick, and then we'll get back to serious stuff.
Yeah.
But I did a college show, and it was at lunchtime. These college shows are famous. I haven't done as many of them as I've heard of people doing them, but these lunchtime shows where you literally are doing a show in the cafeteria for people eating their lunch. It's a horrible gig. But at this particular show, they really only had like a half hour for lunch. And I'm doing, an hour. So I'm standing in the corner and people they're coming in and out or whatever. And I'm bombing and all this, but I'm finally starting to build a little momentum with these people. And I'm going and I'm like feeling pretty good. And then I do a callback and I set it all up and it's for a big spot. And I do the callback and it gets nothing. I'm like, what? I thought I had them, Then I realized these are all people who weren't in the room.
Oh, yeah.
When I did the setup to the callback, it was like they had cycled through, So that's also something to think about. But,
yeah.
Anyway.
No, that's a great. We'll talk about college. I don't think we've done a college show one yet, but that is the rotating audience makes for.
It's not something you're gonna run into very often.
And in that mode, it's just survival mode. You don't when you have a rotating off. It's when you're trying to stop them as they're walking by. Those I don't know if we have enough advice for those shows. We can do that episode right now. Try to avoid those shows at all costs.
Right. Just hang on.
But yeah, I'm trying to think of. I'm trying to think of something exactly. If I can think of something in my act where I do a callback, but.
Well, yeah, I think like every time I've had an hour that I can think of, like, okay, this was my hour, like the one I'm working on now. There's definitely been callbacks in the set, but I think the more I think about it, the more that I don't love it as much, because to me it's like it's fun and the audience loves it. It's something the audience appreciates more than I think they appreciate it too much. To me, like I like really funny idea. Like I like a really funny premise, and like a really funny punchline. You know what I mean? I like something that surprises me or something I haven't heard before on a subject I don't hear talked about a lot. That's my favorite thing. And I love comics who really get into that. The callbacks are like, oh, wow, they did that. Okay. Like I can appreciate it, but it's not like, oh my God, it was like the funniest thing.
We're opposite on this one. Well, as an audience member, I feel like it's a reward for like paying attention. It's I'm glad I was. Oh, this is like a little. We had a great dessert here, and I didn't know we we're having dessert. Here's a little dessert, and I love like if you have a big punchline, but then if you could even do a callback in the punchline, to me that's like. But I just like that.
It's a good topper too, like because there's a way to go. this joke, I've topped this joke out. Like I've tag. I've got a topper. It's like, that's the biggest laugh. I've wrung all the juice out of this joke that there is. But then a callback to whatever on top of that is a way to go way over the top and like beat it.
Yeah.
But
well, that's probably
the
just
other
ego driven by me. I just love that big.
yeah. But which, and you should be trying to kill. You know, I mean, that's like, it's stupid for me. I'm just saying, like, my own personal tastes. Like, the funniest things I've ever seen have never been like callbacks. But it's an example of like craft, right? So it's like, I think callbacks are less art than they are craft. So it's like, it's craft in a couple ways. One, it's like, this is a way to kill. And if you write them cleverly and place them smartly and don't overuse them, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to see a string of like, because I've seen this before too, where like people will call like a run of callbacks, like the 3 different jokes in the whole, at like a big explosion at the end. It's like, I don't need that.
Yeah,
you know?
the people unplug their phone and say, "Hey, don't call back ever again." We changed our number. Don't ever call back. Yeah, I agree with that.
But pick your spot. I think the less you use it, the more effective it becomes. I say pick your spots, but then also it's a way to tie a whole show together too. Like it makes it feel more like a performance. You go, oh, they've really thought about this whole hour or 20 minutes or however long you're doing. They've thought of this as a whole thing and not just a string of jokes all in a row. So
yeah,
it is a good way for continuity.
I like what you said about craft instead of art, but I do think it's like the craftsmanship of it. Like you said, maybe the topping, or it's putting that little last glaze on something like, oh, I'm really good at this shit. And you didn't see that coming. And like I said, the one personally for me, which is because I get, you watch so much stand up. I have a hard time watching people do stand up before. And when I'm at my best, it'd be like, if I'm watching you and then maybe I have a tag for you, and then you say something in your joke that I can just put into my joke. Like if I'm watching you and then I find a callback, you say, let's say I have a football joke and you say something about the Seahawks and I could just shit on the Seahawks. Then that even just gives me a little more excitement for my own act. Like, ooh, I know what's coming.
Right. No, it keeps you present, right? It like little things like that. So again, going back to like calling back different performers, not just yourself, but anything you can do in the moment to lock you in, like make you like, this is what I'm doing right now. And this is all happening tonight. That's great. Like, I think like you want stuff like that just to keep you present and keep you alive, The other thing I'll say about callbacks that I think, again, it's the craft of it is the time you choose to put between when it's in your set, not when you're calling back from a different comedian, but when it's in your set, it's built into your set, a callback, the time you choose to put between when you set it up and when you pay it off. Like, I think there is too long, right? Like if you call back on your closer to your opener, I think that's too long. I think people
it better
are like,
be a strong. I agree.
They better really remember,
have something. Yeah.
That's a long time to expect the audience to go, oh, but if you do it like only like 2 minutes apart, that's too close, because then it's not going to hit as hard because it's not as far of a reach for the audience to go. So I think like I don't know what your opinion is. I think like 15 to 20 minutes is the perfect space between the joke and the callback, unless it's like sometimes it's like mini callbacks like within the bit itself, but outside of that, like,
but that's still more of a tag, I would say.
That's more of a tag. Exactly. I've had people call my tags callbacks before. I'm like, it's not a callback, but yeah, I know what you mean.
But no, I do think 10, 15 minutes is like that's it's just when you like, especially it's a joke they liked and then they're on to the next joke, but then part of them's like, man, I still like that joke. And then if you just hit them with like, oh, that's from the joke that I really liked back there. I love that joke. And now it's part of this joke I also like.
Right. Cause I'm trying to think of like the Chris Rock. I think it's like Bigger and Blacker or something. But when he talks about the big piece of chicken, like you got to leave dad the big piece of
Yeah.
chicken or whatever. And he calls back to that. I think it's like his last line of the whole special is like he calls back to it. But I want to me, the way I think of it is like you do the joke that sets up the callback before the check drop. You know, you do that like the 20 minutes before, then you kind of mess around, then you start building to your closer, then you close. And then if you're closing on the callback, then it's like, okay, that's great. That's like ties the whole piece together or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about it. So, like, I talk about my dad going to prison and like the first, let's say, 8 to 10, and then at about the 40-minute mark, in the middle of a story I usually close with, then I tag him on, and then I hit him on a callback, and
The
it's
college
like,
thing, right?
yeah, they're like, the college thing, or when I say I robbed Dillard's, and they're like, you stole all this money, and I just go, my dad would be so proud of me right now, even though I haven't really brought him up in that story. That is like a payoff to me of like, but I'm with you. That's usually right. But because
you're still in like the 30-minute, right? If you're going 10 to,
but you're right. You don't want to drop a callback in the check drop because that's when half the people don't waste your callback when people aren't really paying attention.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't waste it when they're not paying attention, and give them, again, it's like, this is the craft. This is like the nuts and bolts, like the science experiment. This is not the art part, right? Like the creativity part. This is like the actual like experimentation. Like, what if I put this joke a little later in my set, and then when I call back to it, does it hit harder or not as hard? You know, like pay attention to that kind of stuff, because that kind of stuff matters. And I think it,
you'll see a difference.
Right. You'll see a difference, and you want to make the audience reach as far as they can and then get it while still getting it. Like that's the key to everything, you know?
Yeah, that's a great point.
You want them to try as hard as they can to remember what you're talking about. And because it'll be so much more satisfying when they get it. It's like doing a crossword. And it's like, if you barely knew the answer and then you get the answer, it feels so much better than if you just know it right away and you fill it in. You know what I mean? So this is like the part that's not necessarily like super creative, but you can screw around with it, like experiment and like see. I think
it's creative for you and your own. It's your process of you. I mean, you can make it fun and go, okay, I'm gonna put it here tonight, and go, man, that did pretty good. I wonder if I move it back, and you'd be like, oh, that's a bad idea, or be like, holy shit, that was a good idea. Maybe let me try it here, and you'd be like, oh, go back to 2. We know 2's the spot.
2's the spot, and that's what I love about stand up too. Is like all this shit plays into it. You know, it's like there's so much. There's so many ways to like, you know, tweak, and it really is like that's the fun part, you know. So
and if you don't if you don't have a callback, you know, you can maybe make that part of your writing one day. Go through and go, man, I wonder if there is something. You know, you don't want to force it, but I don't think when I started, it took me a while to realize, oh, here's a callback here, that it was actually like part of writing. When I think I saw people doing it, and I was like, wonder if I could do something like that. Then I was like, then I tried to jam a few shitty callbacks, but then once in a while I'd get one and be like, oh, this is fun.
Right. And you don't want to jam them, but I think again, that's the value of, we've talked about this on the set list episode, but like the value of writing set lists every time is it gets your brain working that way towards transitions and callbacks. You know what I mean? And like, if you're looking at it on paper, your brain might make some connections that you might not have made otherwise. Yeah,
just something simple of, if you did write out your set list and then the comic before you or 2 before you said something, you jot that down by elephant, you just put Joe Rogan feet, and then you just remember, then you go, oh, but then let's say that joke is usually Joe Rogan, but this time for something it's Theo Vaughn. Then you go, oh, you know what? I'm gonna make this Theo Vaughn tonight. I'm gonna put this on my set list, and then it'll remember it. Then you'll get a call back, and you'll be like, I'm doing shit up here. These elephants and Joe Rogan's feet we're doing it. That was a callback right there. See how I did that?
That should be the name of our podcast, is Elephants in Joe Rogan's Feet. We have like
Elephant,
10 million subscribers.
elephant in Joe Rogan's feet. I mean, I don't know. I'm on board. We come up on search history.
I know. I don't know which one would get us more hits, Joe Rogan or feet.
Yeah, elephant
I
feet.
feel like they're both elephant feet. Yeah.
Yeah, what if we just made this Joe Rogan's feet? The Joe Rogan's feet podcast. It's a callback to episode 21 where we talk about transitions and callbacks. We transitioned Stand Up Explained to Joe Rogan's feet and changed our lives.
I'm so confused. But yeah, honestly, like we've been talking about stand up so much on this podcast, and I've been thinking about it, and I really am like reevaluating this closer I have, and I'm like, I don't know if it's strong enough without the callback, and so I might move things around. And then sometimes I'm like, the joke that I'm calling back to also, it's like a good joke. I think it's a good joke. It's like it works. It's fine where it is in my act. It's kind of like the middle. But then I'm like, the punchline is like perfect for a call. Like it's like asking to be called back to. And sometimes in my head, I was like, did I just write something that would fit this call? It's going backwards. You don't want to go that way,
Yeah.
So you want it to be a little more natural, a little more organic. And I think it'll hit harder if you are able to do it that way.
What's funny is sometimes a couple callbacks I've gotten are from audience members when they're like, I didn't even see it, or I'd prefer it from other comics. Well, I don't mind actually from audience members. I don't want joke stuff. We talked about a little on here. I don't want joke suggestions because you never know where it comes from. You don't want to steal. But there has been times when I was like, or if I was off the cuff, that's when I hate it, when I miss a callback. When let's say I do a joke up front, then I'm riffing in the middle, and in the riff, I miss the callback. And that's the ultimate torture when the audience is like, dude, I thought for sure you'd say Adam right there.
Oh, right,
and I'm like,
right,
God, that was the callback. That was the one. Then I'm in the moment. Then I'm a professional. Then the crowd's like, this guy is so fucking good. He just brought back something, and it's just like,
sometimes I've gotten callback suggestions from audience members too. And sometimes they're good. I mean, like I think there is something to be said about, comics. We get so pretentious and we're like, an audience member has nothing to tell me. Like, just shut up, say good job, say that was funny, and then
please buy this shit. We need it.
Please buy this shit, and then go away, buy me a drink or whatever, go away.
Yeah.
But no, sometimes they're right because they're seeing the show from a perspective that you're not seeing. It's like it is hard to like look at yourself and your act through the eyes of someone that's not you. So sometimes you do get like valuable.
Yeah. And the more I think about that, I like that because that just means they were paying attention. They were into it, and they might miss on their callback, but I much prefer that than, and this has nothing to do with this episode, then when they come up and go, okay, hey, let me tell you a joke you can use in your act. Get out of here. We are pretentious on that. But I do a couple times. But like I said, though, it seems like more of those ones when it's a little extra torture because they're like, when they see it, I guess maybe I am a little pretentious. I'm like, damn it. How the fuck did they see that? In your
defense, you're literally on stage in the moment, talking, holding court. Like you don't have the benefit of like sitting there and really thinking about what to say next. Like you just have to say what you say next.
But I love what you said about being in the moment. And there is times in the moment when I am riffing up front, when I do see it and go, oh, I can do this in a little bit. And then that's like, again, that's the callbacks when I'm like, I'm so fucking good.
that's right. Isn't that a great feeling when the calm before the storm?
Why am I not more famous?
When you're sitting on it and you have it in your back pocket and you have it and you're just kind of waiting for the last laugh to die down and you're waiting to say, and then it's going to crush. That's a good feeling.
Yeah. That is the one. And last thing on callbacks, most bookers won't call you back. So if you just know this, here's something most of the time you're not going to get called back. So keep working on your callbacks and transitions. Just keep crushing it. You have anything else?
No, that's valuable advice.
I didn't mean to be a downer there.
If you're calling bookers, they're not calling you. But I don't know if you're supposed to call bookers anymore anyway.
Yeah. Well, they will. They won't text.
No, that's it. That was a good. I feel good. It's making me honestly like this is one we're going deep now because this is really making me think about my act and like I want to record my hour when we get back to normal, and I don't want to do it. I really want it to be good now because I've had a lot of time to freaking think about it. So, this is good. This is a good discussion.
So I love it. Keeps the comedy mind going. So listen to this podcast. There's other comedy podcasts out there. I love it. I love to
We're
just
the best one.
Keep my brain thinking. We're obviously the best one. Don't worry about money or background setups or studios. We're just the best. And we love you. And we do it for free. We don't ask you guys for shit, but we are going to ask you to do this. Please tell a couple friends. Post something about the podcast. Get a few more people in here. We'll take a few more questions, but we hope this helps. I tell you what, it like you just said, it helps me. I was telling somebody today, I was telling them, I go, it's for young comics or people going, but I go, what I like about it is I'm learning shit every time we do it.
Yeah, just
I really am.
Out.
It's good
saying
just
it out loud, things that you've thought, and then you don't always express it out loud, so.
Yeah. Well, okay, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. We will be back next week. Please subscribe, rate, review, tell your friends, post something about it. Get us a few more listeners because I think we're fighting a good fight. We're teaching everybody how to do stand-up, and there will never be a show again. But we can all go to our graves knowing that if there was stand-up again, we'd all be really fucking good at it. But that's it for this week. I'm Brant Tobler.
I'm Andrew Slater.
See you guys next week.
See ya.